Who even stores anything meaningful on magnetic tape these days? Andy crawled to freedom, shook his head in disbelief as he gently placed the lid of the container on the desk next to him. He'd made sure the owner of the apartment, and these tapes, wasn't home when he slipped through the skylight of the dingy studio apartment he'd been directed at. And for a moment he wondered if he was being set up, but he remembered his instructions. The guy's a complete loon, doesn't believe in digital at all, is all analog. Chances are he's even backed stuff up on vinyls. Andy muttered the last words to himself as he let the cassettes be for now and began to meticulously search the room up and down. There were no records he could find, and Andy even spent an extra bit of time thumbing through the bleached white papers by the printer, so much for saving Mother Gaia, to see if perhaps he'd hidden some printouts there, but he found nothing. Finally satisfied, he emptied the container into his backpack, the cassettes rattling as the hard plastic fell into the much larger on the inside container. With one last wistful look, he surveyed the squalor of his old mentor's abode before he left the way he came in. Most likely the old man wouldn't even know Andy had taken the recordings. He probably didn't even know he'd made them in the first place. Age is a terrible thing, and couple that with a strange delusion of being the chosen of the Weaver. Once he was back in his own place, Andy took a shower, feeling grimy regardless of how thorough he cleaned himself. He was an excellent burglar, but this job had left a bad taste in his mouth. It was only because his elders had told him directly about it. Recording our tribe's entire history, Andy muttered in disbelief as he toweled his hair, stepping out into his own rat hole of a living space. Compared to his mentors, this wasn't much better, most likely worse, but then who could afford living in anything built after the 60s with the economy being like this? He glanced at the cassettes, and for a moment considered just running them through the garbage disposal unit in the sink. But then, biting his lip, he got up and dialed one of his septmates, glancing out the window. Hey. Yeah, it's me. Listen, you got a tape deck? Yeah, it's fine. Batteries won't be a problem. I got a spirit that owes me a favor. Alright, see you soon. Wardens of Apes. Yep, that's what we used to be called, way back when. Our glyph is originally just a house with Gaia inside of it, and as time has passed, we've added more floors to the house. Many would assume that we are a young tribe, perhaps created as an amalgam of other tribes coming together, having seen the Weaver for what she is. But no, we have been around long before glass even was a thing. I cannot deny, however, that our origin may lie within other tribes. There are many stories for how we came to be, one of them even claiming that we were created to watch over the humans by the Silverfangs, who were curious and wary about the hairless apes and what they were up to in their caves, bashing rocks together and making fire. Others argued that we were not even a tribe until the 1400s. Our origin may be murky, but what I do know is that there are legends of a tribe that did not participate in the Impurgium. That prehistoric purge conducted by our kind against the humans. I'm willing to bet good money it was us, not because of sympathy or compassion, but out of self-preservation. We, and arguably the Monars, are the two tribes most closely linked to humanity. So why would we shit where we eat? Or, to use a better analogy, why would we eat our own family? Naturally, this probably didn't make as many friends amongst the other tribes, but then again, I'd say that's not very different from now either. Most of them look at us with suspicion, thinking we are tainted by the Weaver. They don't know anything. Were it not for the Weaver, the worm would be free to cause whatever suffering it desired. The Weaver contained destruction and allowed for great joys to flourish and last longer. Do we really want to go back to the unpredictable, harsh, and lethal life we once lived? I, for one, do not. Well, regardless, once the Impurgent was over and done with, we'd probably dug our heels pretty deep into humanity. If it weren't for our ancestors, I'm sure their descendants weren't going to change much. In fact, we stuck to humanity like glue, and, like humanity, we decided to travel. I've heard a lot of stories about our tribe's origin, but I believe in the idea that we originated in the Middle East, around what is Israel and Palestine today. Without going into the politics too much, I'm going to assume we left that place quite a while back. It is definitely not considered the homeland by any of our tribe I know who aren't born there. But like I said, humanity was prone to travel, and we went with them. Meaning we went to places we had no business going to. A lot of tribes will tell you that they're not sure who started the War of Rage, or why, but I'll tell you right now, there's a 68% chance it was us. I'm not proud of it. In fact, it was probably the single biggest mistake done by the Garou, even worse than the Impergium, and it's most likely why the situation's as foobar as it is right now, but we should own up to it. We traveled to other lands, we met the other Pharaoh, and we decided we didn't like him very much. Blows were exchanged, allies were called in, great purges were conducted, and once it was over, some of our ancestors still didn't think they'd done a bad thing. I read some prose, and I use the term loosely here, from the 5th century CE, where they were still going on about how bad those other Pharaoh had been at their job. So that's our duality. We didn't kill humans in the Impergium, at least not indiscriminately, which is a plus, but we instigated the War of Rage, which put all of Gaia in imbalance, so arguably not a plus. I wouldn't even say they balanced each other out that much, to be honest. The reason I believe we came from the Middle East, by the way, together with the Natufian people, to be exact, is because of certain archaeological findings from that period. Icons, in particular. Icons depicting cockroaches. As far as I can tell, cockroach has been our tribe totem for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, these cockroach icons also had tents on them. So I would argue that as long as humanity has lived in places, hell, even when they lived in caves, they've been plagued by roaches. There's quite a lot pointing towards our tribe adopting Jewish costumes and traditions around that time as well. I mean, when the monotheistic Judaism started to come together, a lot of their dogma appealed to us Wardens, and as more of our kind were born to humans, we kind of started using their symbolic language as metaphors to instruct our cubs in the workings of the world, I would assume. The one who told me this was pretty cocksure about it, but honestly, what happened 4,000 years ago is anyone's guess at this point. I would be remiss not to mention the Bolizuishe. I don't know how to pronounce that, but even if it's just briefly. They're a Chinese branch of our tribe. Hell, maybe we're a Western branch of theirs. But we both worship cockroach, and we both like cities, so at worst we're just roast with any other name, you know. Now that's about as far as I'm willing to talk about them, though. The Hengyokai, or Beast Courts of Asia, have always been a mystery to me. Never met any of them myself. But maybe one day you'll find someone who can tell you more. And also wants to tell you more. There are those of us out there who think we originated in China, but I'm not sold on the idea. Mainly because there's definite proof we were around in Rome, for one, and I thought I heard something moving outside. There are those who would rather these words weren't heard by those outside of our tribe, but I'm of a different mind. The more who knows the truth, the less reason we'll have to distrust each other, right? Clear up any risk of confusion, any element of chaos, and you'll have order. Anyway, we joined the Romans somewhere around 60 BC, more or less, most likely when Pompey conquered Jerusalem and incorporated Judea into the Republic, soon to become the Empire of Rome. The Silverfangs were the other big tribe of Rome, and like today, we rarely saw eye to eye on many issues. It's no surprise that Rome was a haven for vampires, the leeches loving the amount of politics going on, including the backstabbing. I would say primarily the backstabbing. But the Silverfangs thought they could root them out of the dark through force, and obviously paid no attention to us or what we told them. No, for once we argued that it would be better to stay out of the cities, and instead focus on where the leeches were the weakest. The field. We infiltrated the legions, and there, far away from the big cities, we took out their agents. Obviously, we learned rather quickly that the Roman army didn't mesh well with Garou warfare. Our way of fighting wasn't the ordered and disciplined Roman way, so we kind of focused our efforts on becoming officers instead, away from the battle, and there used our influence to rid the Republic, later Empire, of its parasites. Unfortunately, being on the front line, that also meant we came to clash with a lot of the other tribes. Most of them weren't Romans, after all, and they kind of lacked our pragmatic view on the matter. They opposed Roman influence, fighting against it instead of using it, and the resentment most tribes carry against us most definitely took root at that time. Rome, some would argue, is the hub of the wheel from which all the spokes of European history extends from. I would say ours fit in there as well. The lead smelting of Rome was a horrendous thing, not only for the early deaths it caused to people near it, and the pollution left in its wake, but also because of the bane it inadvertently created. Stanum, as it was called, was at the time a massive threat, although one that could be beaten back given effort. He would reform time and time again, despite how much damage would cost him, but it was still manageable. I say still, and later on you will understand why. Eventually Rome fell. The ghetto offenders like to take credit for that one, and I will happily let them have it. Rome could have become better. I mean, it could have, but of course it wasn't good. Many of our kind will say that Rome was the pinnacle of our tribe, but they're idiots. Rome was corrupt to the core, and all manner of wormish depravities took place that would make your blood curdle. But it held a lot of potential that few, if any, states have since then. I do wish we had handled it better, though. Had the other tribes understood and joined us, I'm certain we could have turned Rome into what we wanted it to be. But due to the wars, the lack of control the further from the capital you got, and the constant backstabbing going on, it was impossible to keep it all together. It split into two parts, and the western part continued to split over time, no ruler able to maintain a grasp over all of what had once been conquered. Following the dissolution of Italy into city-states, our kind lost our grip on the Roman politics completely. Vampires took over cities, dominated the mortals, and ensured nothing could threaten their power. So, what did we do? Well, as always, we went with the winners. The three grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will. Procyon, who has been reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels. And Dougal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their childhood, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Dani, whose mere presence chills the heart. Maximilian as Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad. Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories. Lord Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend. Alexander Canehurst, inquisitive explorer and steward of the Canehursts. And Snow, who oversees the progress of the council patiently from the shadows. On the council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, Colin Gifford, 06, Ian Nichols, the Black Friar, Brandon Hunter Hayden, the Autumn Alchemist, and Michelle Light, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week the council would wish to welcome the Elder Hunter to our fold. We deeply appreciate your support and wise counsel. We would also wish to thank the Ancile Victor Quirot, who has remained a staunch supporter through times of peace and times of trouble. Naturally, all our elders, Ancile, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching.